Alright, well, good morning everyone. So today we are joined by Professor Ashwini Tiwari. He teaches special education related courses at University of Houston downtown. He has background in special education. He has also taught as a special education teacher in US. And then he studied from India and then pursued masters from Arizona State University. And then later on he pursued Ph.D. from Penn State University. And then that Ph.D. degree was a kind of dual program, educational leadership and comparative international education. So let us listen to about his work. Especially he has worked related to inclusive education in Delhi setting. And personally I have followed his line of research, especially since his part of work also talks about corporal punishment in Indian context. So disciplining, and then what are the mechanisms teachers, educators use for disciplining, tackling disciplinary issues. So his work has also focused on Ahmedabad. So that's how we got into contact, and then since then we have been friends, and really delighted that you are here today, Ashwini. So looking forward to the talk. Okay.
Thank you, President. Well, good morning. So like Kassan said, I was born and raised in Bihar. And then growing up, I had seen a lot of issues with educational equity and social justice. So, but I never knew that I wanted to go into education and I wanted to be a doctor. But eventually it happened. So, to give you a brief background information or contextual information, this research wasn't really meant to be a special education research. I went into the field with intention of finding data on classroom management, and this topic just came to me. So that's the beauty of doing qualitative research, right? You go and you start talking to people and you get ideas. And I started exploring it, and then I found that, like many other things, there's disconnect between the policy and the practices. And I was particularly interested in classroom level factors, what's going on inside the classroom, not so much in the school building and just talking to the principal. So this is still kind of ongoing research. I'm not done yet. I've written some papers based on it. We have done survey research and we have done qualitative study. But I still consider it a kind of exploratory study. It's in very infancy stage. Because, to tell you, and I'm criticizing my own research, which I think is okay, these research are great. You need to understand what teachers are thinking. What's going on in the classroom? Okay, that's great. What's next? And it's a big problem that I'm having now, because they are like, okay, we know, we have some barriers, what are we going to do next? And when I go and talk with the teachers, and I've established really good relationship with some of the schools in Delhi, they're like, sir, हमें कुछ बताइए कि कैसे काम करें हम students के साथ, even principals and teachers. So they want something concrete, like a methodology, strategies, right? So that's where my research is heading now. And Katana and I was talking about it, implementing perhaps RTI, in some form of RTI, response to intervention, which has worked really great for at-risk students, for students with disabilities, and students who are sort of migrant worker in bigger metro cities, like for example in Delhi. So that's where it's heading. But I wanted to start with this. Let me when you hear the word inclusive, what comes to your mind? Well, what it means to be inclusive. It's a very rhetorical word, right? We use it a lot, inclusive, inclusion, right? What comes to your mind when you hear the word? Let's make it an interactive session. It's a very small group, so that's good. You can talk, and then we'll go into methodology and stuff.
Parallel can be with equity. Equity basically like everyone should be given the same opportunity, and like everyone should be presented with same like level of education if we are talking about education sector. And they should not be no one should feel distance basically. Motivate both the qualitative and the quantitative, the motivation factor and the resources should be provided equally to everyone. So I guess
So what's the difference between equality and equity?
Equality and equality is basically like I understand from perspective like if you are already in a high class and someone is from a lower class, if same level, let's say some resources are being dispersed by the government,
Right.
if equal resources are dispersed to you and that guy, that's equality. But you do not need those resources. So if your share of resources is also given to that particular lower class guy, then that's for me is equity and justice. Because so we must fulfill everyone's needs basically, seeing their
That's good. That's good. So yes, inclusion is very loosely. It has a very loose connotation these days. People use it inclusion like anything, and it's a very broad thing. Very broad umbrella. Underneath it, there are a lot of different issues that come. But my research is focused on this piece actually, is focused on special education, right? So, but inclusion could mean like inclusion of students with different cultural background, English language learners and all that. So what does it mean? So this is a formal definition which you can find on UNESCO's website. For this particular study, I've used this definition because, there are two factors when you talk about inclusion of students with disabilities, and primarily what I've noticed is people are focused on this more than the social benefit, and this is completely lacking. They do talk about including kids with disabilities in the classroom, but for social benefits. People are not focused on pedagogy. Okay? They're focused more on, okay, well, it's a good thing, it's a moral thing, kids with disabilities feel good, so that's why we should include them. Right? So coming from that perspective. If you look at the legislative framework, RTI and all that, it does say that when they say like all children, every child, that does mean that these students are also part of that. Okay? It's not just a moral thing, it's their right that they should be given education in their grade level classroom as much as possible with adequate accommodations and modifications that they are entitled to, and services. Okay? So if you look at the literature, and Nidhi Singhal is at Cambridge and she does a lot of research on this area. So right now the focus, so there are two concepts, mainstreaming and inclusion. Okay? Mainstreaming is when you bring students to general education classrooms, right? And just you leave them there without providing any substantial services so that they can be successful in the classroom, right? Inclusion is you bring the students with disabilities in regular education classroom and provide the resources, the accommodations and modifications that's needed. So mainstreaming is kind of child dumping. You're dumping the child without, providing meaningful resources. And you're setting those students for failure in a way, if you don't provide a resource. And that's, people say, okay, well, you know what, we are doing inclusion. But in a lot of times, what I've seen in my observation, even in US context, they are doing mainstream. They're not really doing inclusion, right? So that's important thing to understand. So there has been a paradigm shift, like in ideology. People are talking about more inclusion. If you look at the literature, our society is evolving. Like in U.S. context, if you look at like 100 years back, women were not even allowed to vote. It's hard to imagine. To be precise, 114 years back. And now, it's known for that, right? They had civil rights movements and all those things. So LGBT issues, a lot of things. So that has shaped the way people conceptualize this group, disability. They have, although nothing was intended specifically for disabled people, those policies, those ideas shaped their status, in the society in general, education, also. We are in the right direction, but we're not where we should be at this point because of misinterpretation of things, right? They have knowledge, but the way they are doing things is wrong. So ideally, all the students should be here. That's our goal, okay? But this is where most of the students in India are. They are in special classroom or special schools. This thing is called least to most restrictive environment. So general education classroom is least restrictive for any students. So that should be the goal. That's where most of the students should be. But this idea is not very rigid. It's organic. Based on their needs, they could be in resource classroom, which is also called academic learning center. When I go to schools, there are students who are struggling in the classroom. One teacher, one special ed teacher will take them to library and they will work with them in small groups. So it's kind of resource classroom, but not really. Because they will just take them outside. So it's like kind of an exclusion within the inclusive context, right? So there's segregation, right? And so that is a restrictive environment because they're not able to interact with their age or grade level peers, right? So it's going to impact both social integration as well as the academic integration. They are not being presented with the content that they should be at their age. And this is important because in 2016, for the first time, Indian government in the legislative framework and the policy framework, they included learning disabilities. Okay, it was so late that should have happened. And learning disability, in a way, is invisible disability because, unlike physical and other disabilities like visual impairment, there's no physical manifestation, so you can't see it. So a lot of people think that they're not working hard, they're lazy, whatever. But it's actually a perceptual disorder. Okay, and 50% of the students in any special ed classroom, special ed program are learning disabled. It's an umbrella disorder, right? They have different type of disabilities. Some students have dyslexia, which is reading difficulty, dyscalculia, which has to do with numbers, dysgraphia, which has to do with writing, printing. They can't write. Okay? but there are ways you can compensate for their disabilities. Okay. Again, this data is, I don't think this is very, I don't think it's right, but it's still, I still put it on because I couldn't find anything. This is really unrealistic. There has to be more people with disability than this. Maybe you guys, I need to get a more up-to-date data on this, but you can see learning disability is not here at all. And one of the problems is that they don't have a way in schools to label learning disability. They don't have a tool. They do, you know, when I used to work here, I did my undergrad from here, we tried to develop a tool. It's called GLAD. It still exists, actually, grade level assessment system. That's what it's called. And it's still being used in some African country, but not here. It's not popular so much for some reason, I don't know why. And this is learning. And you know, one of the reasons you don't see a lot of, you know, the largest proportion is here is because families don't want to accept. A lot of families are in denial, or there's a lot of stigma or stereotype associated with disability. So they don't, in census data, or if you're doing survey, if you're doing home survey, they'll say that, oh, okay, well, no, my child is fine. उसको थोड़ा सा problem, समझता नहीं. You know, they will never try to see what's going on. You know, if there is a learning issue, like what specific issue they have. So they're not really reported. So maybe that's why we don't see, you know, typically based on USK context, I mean, there are like 16% students in any school with disabilities. Here, that percentage might be 1%. Because they think that even if we, you know, say we have disability, it's not going to make any difference, right? So I've seen students where they come with their own aid from home. So parents pay for a person who will come with the student to the school, and then they sit in the classroom and stuff. All of that should not happen. The school should be providing resources. If it means that they have to provide an aid, a teacher aid, they have to, right? But this is something that I've heard from a lot of people, including a lot of principals. They are saying that we don't know about special education. What is special education, right? I got my MA, but I never had any class on special education. Okay, I just know I got a circular that you have to do this, but what does it mean? They don't know, right? So that there is implication for our teacher preparation program and principalship program. There has to be something there. They have to be given something, right? So my research actually was focused on understanding the classroom factors, and I wanted to know what do they think well, of course they have heard the word mainstreaming and inclusion. But what exactly they think about it? What the connotation they're making? Okay. When you look at the literature of inclusive education, it's very debatable. A lot of people argue that if you put a student with disabilities in a general education classroom, you're not doing any help to that student. And the reason is, if they are 3 grade level behind, you won't be able to teach it in a regular education classroom with 30 other students, which sometimes become 60 students in some public school, JJ Conley, Delhi. How can you teach those students, right? So, it's very debatable, especially for content instruction, right? how do you provide a content instruction in a regular education classroom where students are not able to learn things, right? So there are a lot of factors actually, and one of the reasons that a lot of people say is there's no difference between, so of course there are benefits, social benefits of students with disabilities going, attending a regular education classroom, right? And academic benefits as well. But what are the benefits that regular education kids are getting by having those students in the classroom? That's the big question. And the research is very thin. There's not much has been done. Beside the fact that, okay, well, they learn to be tolerant, you know, their homework completion rate goes up, and there are a few research, but not much. So yes, so that's a struggle. This guy, Umesh Sharma, he's done a lot of research in this area. He's in Australia right now, and so he has done research in specific content areas, and there is some correlation between test scores and I don't want to read it, but the idea is that it does make a difference. Can you guys think of anything? Let me ask this question. What do you think are the benefits of having students with disabilities in a general education classroom, where they are fully integrated?
One is the Pygmalion effect. You don't tell them they are abnormal, so they know the expectations are not below par.
That's a good one. What else?
So they can also identify there are so many other things that they share in common with the other students. Many other, for example, there are so many other aspects of life than specific lessons in mathematics or English or languages, right? So they can always be part of those activities. So they see that they are not that different as well. So this labeling does not happen so much. Internalization of the labeling. Another thing is that the other students, often when the instruction is done right in differential manner, so they get to teach or share their knowledge. So their own learning, it becomes very concrete, because you are constantly also teaching somebody else or sharing your knowledge. So, but in order to teach others, you have to have really clear understanding. Their own comprehension level really shoots up.
That's an excellent point. Yes, absolutely. So you know, let's talk a little bit about learning disability, because that's of an interest to me, and that's quite prevalent, right? It's a perceptual disorder. And it's a disorder that impacts students globally, not just in classrooms, not just in their academics, in their personal life, right? And eventually they are going to be part of our society. They will be among us. So we don't want them to be burdened on the society, right? And it's really, really hard to label a student with learning disabilities, right? And that because of their figure ground perceptions, you know, there are other things. Let's do this, actually. I was trying to find some activity, but I couldn't, but you know, I have limited time, but I think we can do this. I want you guys to, for 30 seconds, close your eyes and just focus on anything, any sound that you can hear. Let's do this. Okay, now let's come back as a group. What did you hear?
Mostly it was AC.
AC? What else?
There's some kind of movement from behind.
Okay.
Leg over the floor.
Okay.
Something bang on the glass.
Good. What else? So, students with disability and especially students with learning disability and autism, there's this phenomenon called figure ground perception. And it's also students with ADHD. When a teacher is talking in the class, like I'm talking to you, you know that you need to listen to me, what I'm saying, right? Because that's why you're here. For students with disability, instead of focusing on the teacher's lecture, they will focus on something else, like AC sound. It's very common. Somebody is walking across the hallway, okay? Some sound outside. So they miss out on a lot of things. So it's very deceiving. They might be looking at you in your face. You will think that, oh, okay, they're listening. Okay. But when you see their work, it's disorganized. They can't take notes. They have difficulty because what happens is the teacher's voice, teacher's lectures become the background. And what should have in the background becomes the figure, primary. They can't focus. Same thing when, so that's like auditory processing disorder. Like they have, they can't process, they can't filter the sounds, right? Visual perceptual disorder, when they have that, instead of looking at the board, they'll be looking at the picture in the wall. They miss out on everything. And the way you know it is when they start failing the class and they're not doing well, there's misbehavior. Like, oh, why that's happening? So they're never paying attention to what's going on, right, in the classroom. And parents and teachers all often say, oh, sunta hi nahi. Class में बैठा है सुनता ही नहीं. Hearing सब सुनता है लेकिन पढ़ाई का टाइम आता है तो कुछ भी नहीं सुनता. It's because they can't process it. It's either overstimulating or they don't have that mechanism fully developed, right? And that interfere with their performance in the classroom. So for this particular research, and I'm sorry, what I'm saying is not correlating with my slides, but you can stop me and ask me anytime. So for theoretical framework, I use this theory, and the reason I use this theoretical framework is because I have seen, even in some under-resourced schools in Delhi, they're doing phenomenal things. Now, I'm not talking about the changes that has happened due to this new government. They are doing extremely well given the circumstances and given the kind of resources they have. Junior schools, not talking about DPS, because for one reason, the principals have set a tone that, hey, you know what? We're doing it. We're doing it to the best of our abilities. We're not leaving any student behind. Even if it's just one student, we have to make sure that, we have services in place, right? We have the accommodations. We have a teacher who help the regular education teacher, to modify the materials, right? If it's one student with visual impairment, we are still going to try to do it. We will do, the photocopies and what stuff. So this what it tells, it does provide a significant explanation of this phenomenon. Why, even though we are saying that we need to provide the best possible education to students with disabilities in regular education classroom, it's the broader discourse that that affects how it's it's been done in the classrooms, right? It's the principal. It's just one teacher maybe. You know, they talk and their ideology changes and stuff. So this research has survey as well, and there was two parts. And this is just qualitative part that I'm presenting here. But qualitative part is more interesting because they are talking about issues that that they're facing in the classrooms, right? And the survey research is very it's like scratching the surface, right? It doesn't really give you a lot of context. But one thing that really struck to me when I was doing this research and collecting data was the fact, the volume of the students that we have in schools and the kind of services they are providing in terms of, there are 4 different types of models, to provide services, special education services to students. Most of the students are getting itinerant support in the sense that they will get to learn through special ed methodology every 15 days or every 2 weeks. The rest of the time, nobody is watching that kid. He's not or she is not on the radar at all. It's like sink or swim kind of situation, right? And you get to talk to somebody who is really trained to work, right? The way that meets your needs in every 15 days. For example, really basic thing, like sitting in the front of the classroom makes a huge difference to some of the students, right? Because there's less distraction. Somebody sitting here versus somebody sitting there, it does make a difference, right? So, but nobody's aware. It's a very simple accommodation that could be done, like changing the physical structure of the classroom a little bit, or just seating arrangement, or just doing some grouping thing. That doesn't require much, but teachers are not doing it because why? Because they are too obsessed with covering their curriculum, syllabus, they're preparing for the test and whatever, the board exam. They don't have time, even for these simple modifications. The content that they present, they present in a very, very linear way. There's nothing there. So when you modify your content, it helps students with disabilities as well as anyone else in the class. It does, if you provide audiovisual content as well as PowerPoint, you show videos, you provide notes, it helps everybody. And but if you don't provide those things, it might mean a deal breaker kind of situation for students with disabilities, who has a disability, right? Highlighting things, right? If you don't do it for regular education students, it doesn't really make much difference. But it does make a huge difference for a student who has dyslexia. Okay? They know where to focus, right? So margins, using margin, taking notes, those kind of things. Although teachers are aware about those simple things, they are not doing it. And I need to find out why. The other things that also come a lot is principals, especially principals, saying that, okay, well, we know about it, but how do we do it? Tell me, how do we do it in a classroom? How do we implement it? Right? So we have the knowledge, we need strategies. So one of the strategies that could be used is universal design for learning principle, lesson plan, where you're providing your content in multiple ways. Now, how do you do it? it's a big task, it's a big challenge. So, this was my sample, and actually, like I said earlier, I went to schools where I knew people. My wife's family has a lot of teachers, so I made connections through them, and I started going, and then, so it was a convenient sampling that I had. I only spoke to teachers who were willing to talk to me, you know, and this research evolved, like I said earlier, because I was doing corporal punishment research, and in that I was trying to ask teachers why they are using corporal punishment even though it's banned, even though it says that you can't. Although, maybe Amrish sir will know, I heard that RT doesn't say that you have, you know, corporal punishment is banned or it's illegal explicitly, so there's a lot of confusion there. But anyways, I went with that question and I asked, and a lot of teachers were lying to me like, oh, I never do it. And then I'll hear from other teachers, oh, वो तो हमेशा मारते रहते हैं, हम तो किसी को मारता है. So they're like, it was really hard. People will say something in your face, but they didn't really mean it. Right? So it's really important as a qualitative researchers to create that kind of atmosphere where they're willing to share things the way it is, right? So I actually followed up with similar teachers that I had spoken to earlier for my corporal punishment research, for this research. And it was quite a diverse sample. Not by choice, but it just happened. Okay? And you would think that older teachers would be more resistant or more sort of not favorable to this idea of inclusion, but that wasn't the case. That wasn't a factor. Same, gender wasn't a factor, actually. Most of my data came from this area, but I also went to this northwest, southwest, and south primarily. There are 8 school districts in Delhi, as per my knowledge. So south is like, some of you might know, it's affluent, and this part is a little bit like problematic, and you know, there's a lot of issues with migrant worker and stuff, and they are close to the villages. And I was surprised to learn that a lot of areas in Delhi are considered to be rural. Even though they are part of NCR, they are rural. You know. So my primary data collection tool were these. I sat in the classroom, and I sat with the classrooms where I sat. A lot of classrooms where didn't have place for me to sit because there were like 60 students in one classroom. Cramped, right? So teacher was telling me that I'm here just to make sure that एक दूसरे का सर ना फोड़ ले, बस मेरा यही काम. How could you expect me to do inclusion and provide services to students who have learning problems? Okay, I can't do it. There's no way I can do it. Okay. Yeah, I mean, if you really think it does make sense, how could I imagine, how could I expect him to do inclusion and all that? So I also watched them, you know, how they're interacting with students and how they are doing things, and not just in classroom, outside the classroom, to get the contextual information. I also spoke to the principals, how they're thinking about doing it, and what kind of, you know, there are school handbooks, and they adopted, so Delhi has this, schools, individual school district, they don't really have their own policy framework, like a school book kind of thing. They just adopt it from what's done at the state level. Like in some US, primarily, essentially all the school districts in US, they have their own manual kind of thing, school policy handbook. not here. And sometimes that's a problematic thing. You're just using it as it is. You're not considering the factors, culminating factors, the contextual factors, who you're serving. For example, schools in South Delhi versus schools in West Delhi, there's difference, there's huge difference infrastructure-wise, teachers, there are a lot of contractual teachers, in some parts of Delhi. So, okay, so those are my data collection tools. And again, there were two parts. So there was quantitative study based on survey, which I'm not a big fan of now because it doesn't tell much. Qualitative study was more interesting to me. So I did transcription, and transcriptions were like really, really difficult for me to, because I live in US, so I took my transcripts over there, the audio recordings, and I gave it to somebody, and I was like, study it. There are a lot of Hindi and English, and it created, so that's why I had to come into the picture, and actually, I use phenomenology as my method, and hermeneutic phenomenology in specific, and that is done because, unlike the other type of phenomenology where you describe the phenomenon, here I will also come into the picture in the sense that this is my interpretation too. I'm not bracketing myself. I'm not saying that this is very objective study where I don't come into the picture. I did, because I'm an insider, I know the culture, and I collected the data firsthand. So my interpretation has a legitimate place in this study, in this context, I believe. Although a lot of people feel that it's not. You should be objective, you should keep yourself out of the research. Sometimes it's not possible, sometimes you do that, your study will not be that interesting. So, for those of you who are researching this time. So one of the first thing that emerged from the data analysis, and I use NVivo a little bit for my transcripts, but NVivo is not very useful. Anyone have used NVivo here? It's a qualitative data analysis tool where you create teams, and one thing that helps when you do use NVivo is it gives you word frequency and stuff like that, so you can tell that, okay, well, they're using these words these many times, so okay, well, you know where to focus. But, I'm old school, so I did my transcripts when I got in, I just took notes and highlight and things like that. It takes a lot of time, by the way. If you're doing that, if you're doing it for your PhD study, keep in mind, it takes a lot of time. But it's really interesting. So, the deficit perspective is very, very prevalent. Okay, so they are coming from the place that, okay, this child has learning issues, or his behavior is really bad because he's special, he has some issues. What we need to do is we need to pour knowledge into his head. So it's almost like this child is empty, you have to pour knowledge. That's the idea they have. That they don't know anything. There's no baseline, right? They have a lot of sense of anxiety because they're saying that, oh, उसको तो mental issue है. And a lot of times when they use, I have to be careful. It took me a while to understand. Mental issue means they're referring to special needs kids. उसको mental, वो तो mental है. So, and then they're saying that they can be violent in the sense that, they take the chairs and just throw it at the teacher or whatever. So there is a sense of anxiety when they're teaching these students. They're like, okay, well, what about my safety? I don't know how to deal with him, how to talk, how to provide the materials that's being covered in the classroom, what kind of strategies. The other part was the structural barriers, and of course the teacher's knowledge is a big part, and there is a huge, this is something that we need to be addressing like right now in our B.Ed programs or M.Ed programs. There should be, and in my knowledge, they don't get much input in this area. They don't know special ed, like what it means to teach students with disabilities. And now, since with the media and everything, the awareness is really high. These things are going to be more common, you know. Students with especially learning disability, you will see more and more in regular education classroom. Students who are not reading or writing at the grade level, maybe they have learning disability. They have never been labeled. Nobody knows. They just think that वो पढ़ता नहीं है, उसका दिल नहीं लगता है, पढ़ाई वाला लड़का नहीं है. Nobody has looked at, finding if there's really some reason. And learning disability is a neurological issue, right? So that's huge. Some teachers are there to, they take a lot of pride in what they teach. A math teacher for 20 years, and he's like, oh, I love what I do. But इन बच्चों को कौन पढ़ाया, कितना भी कर ले तो उनको कुछ आता ही नहीं है, तो वेस्ट है. उनको बोर्ड का एग्जाम दिलाओ, फेल कर जाएगा, क्या है उनको. So they're not bad teachers, they're excellent teachers. But they don't get that sense of satisfaction. In some ways, their ego doesn't get satisfied working with these students. They don't really, because of this actually, I think that's one of the reasons. Although a lot of them do not admit or accept that they don't have knowledge, but I think these are related. Like, oh, okay. So this is one of the quote, and this is a middle school teacher who's one of the senior teachers, and see what he's saying. His idea of special education is like, okay, it's a good thing. It's a good thing for students. They feel good, they feel confident, उनको confidence आता है, अच्छा feel करते हैं अपने बारे में, self growth. But he's not looking at other aspects. He's not into like, how do I change my lessons? How do I help them? How do I maybe provide tutoring, extra help that they might need before school, after school, whatever. There might be other. How do I find resources to help this kid? Like, oh, वो तो आते हैं बस बैठते हैं, कोने में रहते हैं उधर, बैठ के अपना टीचर के साथ तो चले जाते हैं. So I asked him, like, did you probe him? Like, did you try to talk to him? Like, नहीं, उनका स्पेशल एक टीचर रहता है, वो आता है, बैठते हैं अपना कुछ करते हैं. क्या करते हैं? आपने कभी देखा क्या करते हैं? नहीं, वो हमारा काम नहीं है. So there is a sense of this otherness, okay? Special ed students for special ed teachers, or whoever, regular teachers. So अपने student में count ही नहीं करते. This idea that हमारा student नहीं है, वो तो आता है बैठता है चला जाता. But I was still impressed because he was willing to allow some students to come to his class. A lot of teachers are not even, they're like, you're not welcome. We have no place, we have no time for this BS kind of attitude, right? इसका कुछ फायदा नहीं होने वाला है, अपना लेके जाओ उधर, right? कोने में या फिर लाइब्रेरी में बैठ जाओ, type attitude. So this guy, and he teach Hindi, and he was trying to talk in English, a lot of difficulty there. And he's one of the teachers who I also interviewed for my corporal punishment study. And I know him very well actually. One of the issues that he has, and he was very annoyed that a lot of his students will eat pan or gudka and spit it in the classroom. And he was tired of it. So you're saying, I wish I could beat them up because I'm so big. That's the thing they do. I mean, they make my classroom dirty. Or he also said that, when I took bus to come to my work, students see me, but they will never offer me seats because there's this saying, we have lost respect, they don't get respect, they turn their back. So he's very, very this, like the power thing, right? I'm the teacher. How could you do that to me, right? The hierarchical, very rigid. So he's talking about the student. So it's like nowadays students get a lot of rights. ये क्या है? Especially at बच्चे हमारे क्लास में क्यों आएंगे? What about my right? Right? We can't beat kids. Okay, उनका right है, हमारा right कहाँ है? So that kind of thing. And according to him, used to gain students because it helped. It was a teaching method, teaching strategy. It was a way for him to motivate students. And now that right has been taken. So, when I talk to him, even now he has a very negative outlook of the system. And he's keep on saying, I'm glad I'm going to retire. I don't want to be a teacher anymore. So, and again, this is, so teachers do go to PDs, professional developments, on every Friday, every other Friday, I believe. But none of their sessions, none of these training programs for each service teachers are designed on special education. They don't get any, in my knowledge, the teachers that I spoke to, I asked oh no, we get circulars, we go to director's office, wherever that thing is, we get training on different things. And it's very, the trainings that they receive in service training is very bureaucratic in the nature. They don't really get tools that they can use. It's very, very, the thing, and again, I have very limited knowledge, so I can't speak for that, but the ones that I come across, the training programs that they're getting, there's a lot of need in that area, in service training. They're not getting enough. In fact, they're not getting anything at all that they can take from the training and use it in the classroom. And that's what they're looking for. It's not that they don't want to do it. They don't know how to do it. So give them that tool. Hey, look, this is what you can use in your classroom. And that's going to help with a lot of things. So this is again, because we are all familiar with this one, we're a very meritocratic society, so we are very okay, marks and board ka exam, tayari karna hai for competitive exams and those kind of things. So that is also kind of a barrier to this whole idea of inclusiveness, because then you're teaching to the test in a way, right? And when you're teaching to the test, in their mind there is no place for a student who can't even read and write appropriately. Okay, well, they're out. So they become invisible in the sense that, and that's the reason parents don't want to come out and say that, hey, okay, yes, I have a child with disability. Uska koi fayda nahi hai. What's the point? Nothing is going to happen, right? There are two concepts, accommodations and modifications. And there's a difference actually. Anyone knows what does it mean by accommodations and modifications? No? Okay, so modification is when you change your content, change your curriculum. But it doesn't mean that you water down your curriculum. There's a difference, okay? Modification is when you're teaching same standards, same content in a different way. For example, if you're giving a test to a student, and students are asked to answer 10 questions, maybe student with disabilities, they might be asked to do 5 questions that are representative of the entire content. If you don't give them the test, then you're watering down the curriculum. You're not exposing the students with that curriculum, right? And that's problematic. And that is what is happening a lot. They modify the curriculum and, oh, इसको तो नाम ही नहीं लिखना आता, तो ये क्या करेगा? There are students who they're barely writing their names and stuff, and they're like, okay, so if you include them, so how do you include that child? If it's a student in, let's say, first grade or second grade, first grade students should be doing single digit addition, subtraction, and they should have awareness, at least they can write names and stuff, and that even that is not happening in first grade classes. How do you teach that kid, right? So the way you do it is you take a small element of the lesson that you're presenting to the class and have the student work on it. So it's still me, right? Inclusion doesn't mean that in a math class the student has to be at the grade level, and do the things that they're doing. It could be something, it could be a modified version, of the content that's being delivered. But what's happened in reality is teacher is teaching something and students are just coloring in the back. So just making drawing. It's totally unrelated, and that is what called child dumping. You're dumping the child and not providing any. To me, and I do believe in full inclusion, which a lot of people don't believe, but I do. As long as the child is learning something related to the broader discussion, that's fine, it's inclusion. Now, when a child is drawing while you're teaching the class, then that's just meaningless, that's useless. So that is happening a lot. When even I saw it in DPS, Delhi Public School. They just modify content and they just give them, and they're like, okay, they're working on it. They're like, oh, we're fully included. Technology is wonderful, wonderful thing. And technology is there in the classrooms. But teachers are so reluctant to use it. When I used to teach classes earlier, I used to say to students, no cell phone. But now I use cell phone in my classrooms. There's so many things that you can do, and depending on the class that you're teaching. Especially for in K-12 setting, like middle school or high school, even elementary school, it makes a significant difference for students with disabilities. There are so many apps, hundreds of apps for reading intervention, for self-regulation. If their student there's like a watch now. It tells you if you're not focused, it just vibrates. It tells student. One of my students uses it. In time to focus, because attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, they can't focus, right? It's the problem. It tells. I think it's a wonderful thing, and it should be allowed. Of course, some families cannot afford iPad, for example. iPad is wonderful for students with autism, pets. There are other things that could be given, and some teachers do use those technologies. Some students are using it too. Normal smartphones and stuff, but it hasn't been properly integrated in the classroom instruction. So that's one area that really need to bring teachers up to the speed. It doesn't have to be like the high-tech technology. Simple things, right? This is something I preach a lot, universal design. When you're doing something, you're teaching something, you should think about the broadest audience that you have. You should, which I'm not doing right now, but you need to present your materials in multiple ways. You have to provide students opportunity to be evaluated in multiple ways. If a student is not able to write, you can do an oral exam. You can still get the content, ask the questions, right? And it's fine as long as the student knows the content, but oral exam has no place in our academic system in our schools. You know, they don't like this idea. Like, oh, okay. It's like when we had CCE pattern in CBSE, which Kathan told me, which were never implemented, right?
Never understood us.
Yeah. So they were like, okay, how did you get a grade for co-curricular activities? That's unthinkable. You get grades for your content area, but not for the co-curricular activities, right? So multiple ways of assessing the knowledge, multiple ways of providing instructions, the materials, could make a huge difference, and that's universal design. And design is a concept that was used by architectures actually. Now they're making all the buildings barrier free, you know, like ramps, or in bathroom there are there are things where they can hold, and so that concept was borrowed from architecture and now it's being used in education too. How do you eliminate the barriers so that, and again, I don't want to repeat myself, a lot of those things help a lot of other people, even though you're doing it for students with disabilities, like changing the content and stuff, the delivery method, it's going to help a lot of other students too. So there's no harm in doing it. So teachers are really obsessed with label. This student has ADHD and this student should be taking medication. But medication itself is not going to help. One of the teachers was saying in DPS that, oh, he's on medication. And one of the embarrassing things that happened when I was there, that parent of one of the students came to the classroom and asked the student, okay, well, you forgot to take medicine this morning, so you need to take medicine because you're very hyperactive and you're not taking medicine. Okay. And he didn't like it. So, you were saying something?
I think we should also then have time for some questions.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, I think that's done. Yeah, so labeling is a huge thing. And label does help, right? But if you're just doing label to use, when you use label, in a way, it also means that you're trying to put some sort of regulation on that group, that minority group. And Foucault, I don't know if you guys study Foucault. Foucault was against this whole idea of labeling people, he was against the idea of even having prison. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't change the person. You just put them into. So label is something that's really prevalent in schools, and people don't look beyond the label, like how to help the labeled person, right? And they're always focused on this medical model of education, right? Behavioral therapist, doctor, they don't think that they can make a difference through their content, their pedagogy, and the way they teach the students, right? Which is what is happening. A teacher is not a medical trained person. A principal should not be talking about their job is to teach. If a student is not learning, you have to find the ways to teach, right? But उसको mental problem, ठीक है mental, ठीक है, तो उसको तो आप कुछ नहीं कर सकते, आप पढ़ाएंगे कैसे? ये सोचिए. But that thing is lacking completely. I mean, to a lot of extent. They don't want to go there in that direction. They're trying to avoid it. Just move. So one thing that I want to say that just most of the teachers in Delhi, at least, they want inclusion. it's not like majority. Okay, they have a lot of concerns. There are a lot of them are on fence, but they get it. They get the idea of inclusive culture where everybody has a place. So that's really encouraging news, right? So everything is not negative and bad. But the thing is, how do you do that? And I think these are the ways that you could do, like creating a structure, a blueprint where the teachers are, and it doesn't really, it's not a rocket science, just making some changes in the way they teach the syllabus, the curriculum, the text. Some changes. And they need a lot of help with this systemic approach and how do you deliver your content. I think I'm going to just stop. Okay, let's stop. Questions, comments? Yes, ma'am.
Could you please elaborate a bit on the theoretical framework?
Yes, let's go back there. Yes, so what happens, so theoretical framework so the way you should use your theoretical framework is your data should be presented in a way that, you need to theorize your data when you find So in this context, this theoretical framework, and I struggle a lot with this, I've used different theoretical framework for this different study. What I found was, and this is a theory that was done, it's positioning triangle is borrowed from communication studies, not really used much in education. So the teachers, they took a position based on the context and the discourse, right? So there are three triangles here, right? You enact the position, you determine the desired position, and support the position. So depending on the context and discourse, you could be at any triangle here, right? So the teachers were, the principals were saying, okay, no matter how under-resourced we are, we need to take this position that we're going to do it, right? It's kind of like Bandura's theory, like of self-efficacy, right? You believe, no matter what you do, if you don't believe that these kids could learn, nothing would help. So this is even one step, it comes before Bandura's. So teachers will take a position based on the support that they get from the school principal and the proper discourse. That's not just I'm not saying that just the school climate and the school environment, even the outside, what goes in the outside society. So they enact their position based on that. If they believe in karma, and they believe this happened because I did something bad in my previous birth, that's going to determine where they are. All of them, they want to be here, right? The desired position is I want to help all the students, right? Well, how do you do it? It's influenced by the support that you're getting, right? And your own beliefs, right? Your own beliefs and the discourse that's going on in the school. So this theoretical framework provides some explanation to that phenomena, okay? But I think, what was your specific question so that I can relate? When I think about theoretical framework, I think about the way my data could be theorized, and I think my data could be theorized through this theoretical framework. So, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just trying to sort of understand whether it's like a continuous thing or is it like a this. I was just trying to understand.
Well, so none of these three things happen in that. They relate, right? It's sort of like your position is based on, and they speak to each other. Your desired position could be like, okay, we want to teach all the students in the classroom, but you can't do it, right? So you're working towards it. This is your desired goal, right? And you're enacting in a way that, that helps with your desired goal. And that is important, right? Even though you're not doing it, but you're taking a stand that, yes, I have to do it, that's where I want to be, then that's good, right? So teachers many of them want to be there, but they're not there for whatever reason, because there's no support, their own belief system, they think negatively about these students, they have deficit perspective, they have no training. There are others, they're against this idea of, and there are few only, idea of educating students with disabilities, and they'll do everything to support their position, in the sense that even though there's a lot of resources, they support their position by saying that, okay, well, this is what I believe, right? So, did it make sense? I should send you my article. I wrote an article on that. I mean, the theoretical framework should speak to your data. It should have a place in your. And when we write theoretical framework, a lot of times, and I have done that mistake, I used to write in a way that, like, it's there, but it doesn't gel well with the study. It's just there. But theoretical framework should be something that you use it, and you bring your own stuff to expand the, right? And this is first time I use this theoretical framework. I use the Bangalore self-efficacy theories and other things, but thank you. I need to think more about it. What else? What other questions you have? Yes, sir.
So I think in spirit I'm very much in agreement with where you're going with this research and what you're suggesting. I'm a little uncomfortable with the framing of it, which is where I think in general as society, as policymakers in education, we look at disability as this thing that certain children have, that we need to be these benevolent benefactors, we need to include them in the system. Instead of as critical, I mean there's a very typical example in critical theory of John beat Mary, Mary was beaten by John, Mary is a battered woman, and then you assign a label to Mary that she has battered woman syndrome, and then you start treating Mary and John is forgotten. So I'm saying in this entire perspective, I think we need to think about how these children have, yes, perceptual and neurological differences from the rest of us, but it is the system that is turning that into a learning disability and excluding them. And to focus on that exclusion that is happening, rather than this need to include them. So we are not trying to correct something that is wrong with them. There's something wrong with us that we need to look at as a system, as a dominant system, which is problematic for them. And I think until we take that frame, you will have these, like I think in your literature you point out huge financial burden. Huge financial burden as if you have private school, I can understand. As a public education system, how can you make that statement that because it's a financial burden, I will exclude some people? But if you're saying, it's a benevolent act I'm doing by including, then you can say this. So I'm thinking there might be something, we might need to look at that framing of disability and how we look at it in education in that sense.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And being a socialistic person, I have a problem. But and I want people to chime in here because yes, you're right. But that has come. There has been liberation, and they do say that. It's like if there are 60 students in a classroom, and I've heard it actually. Why change things for one student?
No, that is the dominant discourse. I agree.
That is the dominant discourse.
I agree, but that is where I think, as researchers, we need to kind of
Right.
frame the problem differently and say it is not about changing things for the one student. It is about saying why should a public education system be designed in a way that excludes that student. And I think then that answer that question doesn't make sense anymore about why we should change things for the one student.
Yeah. So in that context,
good
that's why
point.
this
Yeah.
RTI approach, the right to intervention, that approach which is there are prominent, widely used in developed country context, that is important because then the thinking is flowing from that each individual needs support, and then those who don't need to then exclude them, then put them in, let's say, more general approach. Then you actually take into account every one of us, because we all are in some ways it's a kind of spectrum, right?
Exactly.
So we would require some sort of support. So you could be a gifted person, then also you need support. You could be, let's say, learning disabled, then also you need additional support. So each one, the assumption is that each one will require some sort of support, and then you can assess that who requires lesser support. Right? So then,
Right.
And then in steps. So after initial screening, then the second step where you will be provided a higher level of support, and there is this individualized education plan (IEP) approach at the third level.
Right.
So hence, but then in our context right now, we are at that level. We don't even have, let's say, school psychologists.
I absolutely understand. I understand that there are a lot of restraints. I'm not talking about the solutions. I'm just saying the framing of the problem till it is at the level that certain students have disabilities, as if the disability is something they possess, rather than something that the system is creating within them.
Right. And you made an excellent point. All of us have disabilities. We're all different.
We are different, exactly. The disability and the ability is created by the system. Certain students have mathematical ability because of the way mathematics is taught in the classroom. It's not something that is somehow inherent in them.
Hence that RTI. So it's important to think through this and how that kind of approach through policy making can be implemented in our context. Because currently we just assume that everybody is normal, and then who doesn't fit into this narrative?
Yes.
That's special.
Right, exactly. I was talking to a group of hearing impaired people, and they were, so you can do cochlear implant and you can hear things, right? If they choose, they can be verbal, but they have chosen not to be, verbal, like use oral language, they use sign language. For them, we are special ed. He told me that you are special ed for me because you don't know my language. So yeah, of course, the entire notion, the conceptualization of disability, how you conceptualize disability has a place. But that wasn't intent of my study, but I'm right. I mean, that could be another area.
That's where you're going actually. If I look at your implications, I think that is where you are in some sense reaching.
Right. I'm a firm believer of not labeling person. I mean, why don't you say that, okay, this person can't read and write? Why you have to say that this person can't read and write because he has ADHD or learning disability? Right? So instead of focusing on this, the focus becomes disability. The focus should be the person, right? So that's why a lot of people are using like the first person approach. Instead of saying like learning disabled student, they will say student with learning disability, right? That's another level. It's still not where you think we should be, and I think so too. But that changes everything. I'm a student who also has some learning challenges. The focus is still me, not my learning disability, right? So for that we need to. It's like changing the culture, the entire discourse. We need to deconstruct the entire notion around disability. There are a group of researchers, they are called disability studies researchers, and they approach this whole thing from a perspective where they see their disability as an asset rather than a deficit. Okay? If you are visually impaired, that's a gift. It's not a disability. So AER as a group, a disability, I went there and it really disliked me. I wasn't welcome because I was approaching from this like, oh, there's nothing wrong with us. So they don't like this idea of inclusion. What inclusion?
Exactly.
Why inclusion?
Exactly. Because that is exactly that problem, which is, I mean, and I think these are like, there are a lot of studies that in the humanities field that are happening in this area of disability and taking a critical view of the way we look at it. Because inclusion to them is like, you're doing a charity, you don't do charity for us. This is not some charitable thing you're doing to us by including us. You're excluding us, and we just want you to acknowledge that.
Right.
And first, like, acknowledge that you're excluding us, and then let's look at what we can do to work together. But don't do this charity to us that you're including us because we have some problem and, you know, things like that. We are different from you, and acknowledge that, and that you're excluding us because of that, and let's work towards changing.
Right. Yeah, you're right. That's really interesting. I think I want to go there, but I'm really hesitant because this is, you know, when I was a teacher, you know, I'm thinking about the practical things that we can do right now at this point. Specific things that, I mean, we have to start somewhere. I mean, we are at a point right now where you can't really change everything like it.
But see, but often what happens is, just because you're changing the framing of the problem, doesn't necessarily mean that you will have a new solution, but what it does is it changes the way you look at future solutions. It changes the discourse. So maybe, yes, practically we can't do much more right now, but it changes the way we look at what we are doing and what we should be doing. With that theoretical framework we have, the desired position changes. So, like, I mean, I had this person who used to say, you should always know the speed of light, you can't achieve it.
Right.
But not knowing it is no excuse. So we should know our speed of light. We should not hide behind.
That's true. And you know, at least we can do. And that's where I'm struggling because when I talk to teachers, they want an immediate solution. Like, okay, but my researcher identity tells me that, you know, I need to change the discourse, the narrative around disability and inclusion. And that's had been a juggling thing for me, like, okay, strategy, inclusion versus changing the narrative.
No,
There has to, I mean, there's a place for both, I think, you know, yeah.
I have a very quick novice question.
Yes.
How often in the literature do you come across the term differently abled compared to disabled? Because the word itself implies that you can't do something. Do you encounter that term often, or
Disabled or
versus differently abled?
So, disabled is more common
Yeah.
than differently abled. I mean, I don't have a count, but I would say like 70% of the time, even in my own research, I use disabled versus differently abled.
So people do they mean the same, do they imply the same thing, or do people use it sometimes differently abled?
No, they use it as synonyms.
Okay.
Like it's the same, it means same thing. Of course, you know, the feeling is different when you say differently able versus disabled, right? So, but yeah, in the world of special education research, it's used quite frequently. Like it's the same way. Differently able is not yet
Not
very
that
popular. You know, they haven't even. I don't use it. I don't know why. I think because you read the textbooks, they are still, you know, disabled. Like mental retardation used to be a word.
Yeah.
But now,
education research setting, it all comes down to test scores or as an outcome, and then graduation rates and things like that. So whatever doesn't then disable that
Doesn't fit the norm becomes.
because differently able, what actually each individual is in a way
Right.
differently able. So then the term disabled is
yeah, and
that's
you raise a really good point because gifted students are also disabled. They're gifted, you know, they're extraordinary in their test scores or, you know, other abilities like musical or athletes. A lot of athletes, you know, US football teams have learning disability. I don't know if you guys know this, but they have learning issues, but they're gifted. Gifted in what they do, but they have a disability. But so this notion, the concept of differently able should be used in a way.
It's just that the outcomes that you focus on, so that's why the term is used more often.
I think that's where it comes from. So as long as you recognize that the term disability is relative to a certain normative outcome that you set, which is exclusionary, I think then that allows you to
Yeah,
recognize
certainly. If you're also, let's say, looking at, let's say, some of the social interaction or some of the other outcomes, and it may not be labeled rightly as a disable or something.
Right.
But if your outcomes are purely academic in nature, let's say mathematics.
But no, I agree. But then see, also in that, we then accept that the academic outcomes that exist currently are somehow ideal and permanent, rather than questioning them as well. So even those outcomes can be questioned. I think.
That's true. Very good point.
But yeah, I completely agree with that point, because we don't want to change as a society across. That's as policy from that perspective. We keep that everybody should reach this grade level outcome. Now, who has decided that should be the goal for each and every human being?
Exactly.
That's also debated.
In our educational philosophy class, we talked about it. Who decided that 90% is A? Some random people. Okay, hey, 90% is A. Okay. There's no explanation. There's no rationale. Who decided that there has to be grade level? Like the student should be based on the age. We just decided we're doing it without even thinking about it. So it's like deconstructing all this.
And then expecting that each human being should reach that grade level. And if not, then that person is disabled, right? So
Yeah. If you don't, by certain age, if you're not in certain grade, then you're disabled. But then, that's where this idea of differently able, the saying comes, because you might be really gifted in something. So you could be. So that's when this double handicap. There's a word called double handicap comes in picture. You could be gifted at the same time. You could be learning disabled. Okay. Gender also plays a factor, and socioeconomic status and everything else. But since our society, especially Indian culture, we are so test-driven, like content and syllabus and all those things. Like we don't look at other things. Art, drawing, it's really it's amazing. There are people who have amazing ability. When I was doing this research, actually, one of the school assistant principal was blind, was visually impaired, and so he told me that when they see a visually impaired student, they try to force them in music, surdas, and all those connotations. Surdas, disco, space, house, and we see that a lot of people with disability are begging. They're visually impaired and they're on the streets, right? It's who is to blame? I mean, it's the discourse, just the narrative that has ingrained that a visually impaired person can be a good singer. There's no correlation, but
there was also this interview by a musician, and then his argument was that what if you have standardized tests for music ability, and then people who don't acquire those abilities, you label them as musically impaired, and then they have special education program for that.
Yeah.
So similarly, let's say for drawing or painting or any other things, then again, many of us will
For empathy, you do it for empathy, you will find all these 50, half of these.
Yeah. So how do yes, sir.
Yeah. So, I just want to ask, did you get a chance to speak to any administrators, like education officers or upwards?
Young principal?
No, how about the administrators means education officers and at a DOE, Director of
Not
Education?
really. I mean, I got permission from them, but I never met with them and talked to them. Yeah, formally.
Okay.
informally, yes, I have in conferences I've chatted with people about this issue and stuff, but that's one of the limitations. Because I didn't get, the connection wasn't made,
So I asked this because in the Indian education system, including Delhi, administrators are the ones who set outcomes. And they decide what needs to be tracked. And whatever is tracked is basically implemented by teachers and headmasters. And also, so my understanding is given the systemic and structural deficiencies and limitations that we have, can we actually really blame the teachers and the headmasters? If administrators themselves are not serious about exclusion, discrimination, and thereby inclusion, we cannot really expect teachers and headmasters who are part of the system to come in. For example, I'll just give you a small example. You mentioned that our B.Ed programs or MA programs are not sensitizing enough or not covering enough content in terms of special education. Now the problem is that there are systemic deficiencies in the teacher education space, wherein special education has always been under the regulatory authority of RCI, which is Rehabilitation Council of India.
Right.
So when it comes with NCT,
Right.
which on the other hand sets standards for B.Ed and MA,
Yes.
it becomes a systemic value for student teachers and thereby teachers in the future.
Yes.
So the problem is that there are so many deficiencies and limitations in the system.
Right.
That can we really blame teachers' knowledge, or can we really say that they have deficit concepts? They do have, but is it because they have developed them themselves, or those perspectives, although sociocultural, have developed over time because of the system? It might be their own perspective. I'm not denying it.
Sure. No, you're right, and that's an excellent point. And somebody asked me, like, then why we have this universal education policy and including all child RT and everything? Does that also mean that you're saying that you'll provide education to these special needs children, and then you have RCI that I was, when I lived here and I was like RCI, I never knew anything, right? You have to get a license from RCI to practice as rehabilitation practitioner. And RCI is all about medical.
Yes.
There's no place for curriculum, nothing. I mean, it's all therapy and speech and all those things. But I think that keeps changing. That keeps changing in the policy, and you guys are more up to date than me because I've been out of the loop. But to going back to your questions, teachers, who to blame? I mean, you can blame a lot of people, but I think the question is, do we really want inclusion? Maybe we're not. We should say that. Acknowledge it. Maybe like it's a utopian idea. It's a good idea. We want to do it, but we can't do it. I don't know. Maybe I'm sounding really negative. Maybe we want to say that. Okay, well, you know what? Maybe we need special schools, or maybe some special system, and not. Now I'm contradicting my own idea, but when I think deeply about it, there are a lot of systemic issues. Like it's a really messy, complex issue, and the reason is still there's RCI. Why there is a need for RCI, and why RCI regulates the B.Ed in special education,
Yes.
and M.Ed in special education. RCI should be out of it. It's none of their business, but they are. And this is somebody needs to tell them that, hey, this is educational issues. This is not you. You don't come here. And then, so that needs to be brought into the MCD structure, like this. Like Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan, I think there was provision of a special education teacher going and doing things that they used to hire teachers and stuff. But why not MCD? MCD should be able to do it. MCD should be able to say that, they are our students, we are, they're not different. So yeah, you're right. I mean, teacher preparation program, this study has actually a lot of implications for the way our teacher preparation program is done, at BA, MA, and stuff like that. But honestly speaking, I think it's like a lot of people to blame here, including us. We are popularizing that narrative and that discourse. That's, it's just, but my thing is, again, having said all that, if you're told that you have to teach a student with disabilities, again, I think this is American in me talking. I'm not American, but I thought my principles say that, hey, to make sure that this student is included, and you have to write IEP, and I'll do everything to do it. I'll go and I'll tell principal, hey, you need to give me resources so that I can do it. So teachers are being told that they are part of this school, they are our students. But they're still like, oh, they're not ours, they're like somebody else's, they're special ed teachers. So I don't know how you say it. I mean, of course they're saying it because they're not aware, they're nervous, they're not trained, they have so much to cover, and there's a couple of students who, okay, well, I don't mind. So I think teachers owe some of those things that's happening. They have to be accountable for this. I don't know if I made sense, maybe not.
No, that's okay. See, the point is that, for example, the simple example of PTI, people-teacher ratio is,
Yeah.
if you have 60 students, I've seen teachers, I've been a government school teacher, I've seen teachers teaching when they have 20 students. But when you give them 60 students, you can't expect. It's just a simple example.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. So that I ask the same question to teachers. You know that you're not supposed to hit a child. You will still hit it. So who to blame? I think it's teachers. You know that you're not supposed to. RTI, although they're saying that it doesn't say anything. Well, they're not doing it anyways. So in that particular case, yes, the blame goes to the teacher. We have to find, again, teachers are saying this is something that I have been using for last 2 decades. How could you take that away from me? It's an important tool for me. It's a teaching tool. And you haven't told me what else to use instead of this. Give me something else and then take this away from me. Right? So that's not happening. They haven't been given any alternative. They haven't just told not to use it. But as being teacher, I think, and I was talking to NUPA president or someone, Rangachari, what's his name? And he said that, no, we're not going to give anything to them. They've been told not to do it, don't do it. Period. Go figure out what else you could use. Argovinda. I met him at CIA conference and we were having the same discussion. So I asked him, sir, what else they can use? Whatever they want to use. They've been told not to use it, don't use it. So, yeah, I know.
Any other? Alright, so thank you so much, Ashwini.
Thank you.
It was really interesting discussion, and thank you so much for sharing your work. And then, of course, we can continue our discussion afterwards as well over coffee and tea and still sandwich total out there. Alright, thank you so much.
Thank you.